Okay, let's jump in. We're taking a look today at some really complex, often quite painful family dynamics.
Hmm.
We're focusing specifically on those mother-daughter relationships that can feel, well, incredibly possessive or engulfing.
Yeah, it's a situation that can make it profoundly challenging, almost impossible sometimes, for a daughter to really carve out her own space, establish her own life, her own independence.
Exactly, and we're drawing on some really insightful observations about these kinds of relationships for our discussion today. The goal here isn't just to talk about like typical family friction,
Right.
right, which lots of people experience.
All right.
It's more about trying to understand this specific dynamic, the kind where the connection feels less like a bond and more like,
Mm.
well, like an entanglement
Mm-hmm.
or even a trap.
Mm-hmm. A trap is a strong word, but it can feel that way.
So our aim today is to try and understand what makes these connections so sticky, so hard to change.
Mm.
We want to look at the potential reasons behind the mother's behavior and, crucially, grasp the huge impact it has on the daughter. So let's start maybe by defining this possessive dynamic a bit more clearly. What are the main characteristics we see?
Well, based on observations, a really key characteristic is the mother's constant demand, or maybe a frequent need, for the daughter's availability.
Right. It's this sort of persistent expectation that the daughter must always have time to listen, time to be there whenever the mother calls or needs something.
Yeah, and it often goes beyond just availability, doesn't it? There's usually an insistence that the daughters share lots of intimate details about her personal life.
Hmm. Like needing deep access.
Exactly. Deep access into the daughter's world is a requirement.
And this demand, it's often not gentle, is it?
Yeah.
The insights suggest that if the daughter doesn't call often enough or, tries to create some space,
Mm-hmm.
tries to set a boundary, the mother actively instills guilt. She kind of punishes those attempts to pull away.
That's a really crucial point. It's an active resistance. The mother doesn't just, silently disapprove. She often refuses to accept the daughter, distancing herself, or moving towards building her own life, pursuing her own interests.
Especially romantic relationships, right? Those
Mhm.
seem to be a major trigger.
Definitely. They're often seen as a direct threat to the mother's position, to that connection she relies on.
There's a description sometimes used for this dynamic that's quite striking, even unsettling. It talks about the mother tormenting the daughter like a cat with a mouse.
Wow. That's incredibly vivid, isn't it?
It is. And the idea isn't necessarily that the mother wants to, destroy the daughter,
No, no.
but more that she holds her, plays with her, keeps her trapped within her sphere of influence.
Right. So even when the daughter moves, say, geographically far away, maybe even abroad for work.
Yeah, that might be sort of tolerated as an excuse.
Exactly. But emotionally, energetically, she's still kept bound. She's like that mouse the cat just won't let go of.
That image really drives home the power imbalance, doesn't it? And that feeling of being, held captive. So if that's a dynamic, why is it so incredibly hard for the daughter to loosen that tie? What's the main obstacle?
Well, the insights suggest the primary obstacle is perhaps surprisingly quite simple, but immensely powerful. It is the mother.
That sounds almost too obvious. How is the mother herself the main barrier?
Because, well, society generally operates under this really deep-seated assumption of good intentions from a mother, right?
The mother knows best idea.
Exactly. It's incredibly difficult both for the daughter herself and often for people around her to really confront the possibility that a mother might have intentions or maybe deep-seated needs that aren't actually in the daughter's best interests, that don't support her well-being.
There's this powerful, almost sacred belief, isn't there? That because she gave birth, she inherently loves the daughter unconditionally and wants what's absolutely best for her.
Yes. And challenging that ingrained societal narrative, or even just questioning it inside yourself, that's immensely hard.
Yeah, I can see that. That societal pressure, combined with the daughter's own natural deep need for her mother's love and approval.
It creates a huge internal conflict. It makes acknowledging the reality of this unhealthy dynamic incredibly difficult. You're essentially fighting against core personal and cultural beliefs.
Okay, let's shift gears then and try to understand the mother's side more based on these observations. What could be driving her behavior?
This is where it gets quite complex. The central idea seems to be that sometimes, if healthy love is there within the mother, it might be buried very, very deeply, buried under her own significant deficits, her own unmet needs.
So it's not necessarily a complete absence of love, but something else is kind of overriding it, taking precedence.
Precisely. The language used can be very strong. Sometimes you hear descriptions like, predatory, engulfing, selfish instincts, ruthless parts of the mother taking control.
Predatory, that's a really intense word to use in this context.
Yeah. It is. It highlights how these dominant, maybe selfish parts seem to prioritize securing constant companionship for herself, constant contact, someone to talk to regularly. That drive can override the natural parental desire to see a child grow up and thrive independently.
So her own needs for connection, for validation, maybe just for company, become the absolute priority over the daughter's healthy development and happiness.
That seems to be the core conflict identified. She prioritizes her own need for constant availability over, letting the daughter move freely into her own life without guilt, with a genuine blessing for her own path, her own fulfillment.
And there are reasons why this happens. You mentioned a couple of main dynamics often involved.
Yes, two key factors are often highlighted. The first one is frequently rooted in the mother's own childhood deficits. Often these mothers didn't experience a good, safe, or nurturing relationship with their own mothers. Sometimes an absent or difficult father figure is part of the picture too.
So they enter motherhood already carrying these unresolved needs and hurts from their own past.
That's the idea presented. It creates this significant underlying deficit. Unmet needs from her childhood that leave her feeling, well, sometimes described as hungry and angry.
Angry and angry.
Yeah, and because of this deep-seated feeling, she can feel intensely entitled to have these unmet needs satisfied now by her child.
It's like she's demanding from the daughter the emotional nourishment she never received herself. Almost unconsciously, perhaps.
Right, and a critical part of this dynamic is that she often seems unable to truly see the price the daughter is paying. She might not fully grasp or maybe acknowledge how much the daughter sacrifices, the relationships, the personal goals, the overall fulfillment she gives up just to remain constantly available.
She's maybe too consumed by her own past hurt and sense of injustice to perceive the daughter's suffering or sacrifice fully.
That's the perspective often offered. The mother is driven by her own pain, her own history, her own sense of injustice. And in that dynamic, feelings of healthy love, empathy for the daughter's situation, or a genuine wish for the child's independent well-being, well, they seem to take a back seat. Or maybe they aren't strongly felt at all.
That's a very difficult thing to process. What's the second major factor often pointed to?
The second significant factor frequently identified is an unsatisfying marriage, a lack of love from the husband, or perhaps for the husband, that can create a significant void in the mother's life, a void she then tries to fill elsewhere.
So a marriage that isn't providing that core emotional connection or companionship.
Yes. Often these might be relationships that maybe lacked a true foundation of love from the start, and they've just kind of continued perhaps out of habit or duty for years. And the situation can become even more pronounced, say, after the husband's death or if he leaves. The woman might feel she has absolutely no one else to genuinely connect with or spend time with.
And in that emotional vacuum, the daughter often steps into or is pulled into a specific role.
Frequently, yes. The daughter is often treated as a surrogate partner.
A surrogate partner.
Right.
Not romantically, obviously, but filling that emotional gap, the companionship void left by the marriage.
Precisely. The idea is that the mother has often, consciously or unconsciously, given up on investing in or caring for her relationship with her husband, even if there might have been some potential there, or even if he suffers from the lack of connection too.
Right.
She effectively writes off that primary adult relationship and turns to the daughter to satisfy needs that ideally would be met within a partnership or through other healthy adult connections.
Wow. That really puts the daughter in an incredibly difficult and really unnatural position.
It certainly does. And it's often the daughter who perhaps hasn't married or started her own family yet who becomes most deeply tangled in this web.
Which makes sense, doesn't it?
Yeah.
How could she really build her own independent life, her own family, when she's already so bound to her mother in this particular way?
Exactly. The daughter can find herself not just in the role of a kind of partner to her mother, but very, very often she's also in the role of mother to her own mother, emotionally caretaking for her in a way that completely reverses the natural parent-child dynamic.
This whole setup seems to leave very little oxygen, very little space for other close relationships to develop in the daughter's life.
Very little, if any. The daughter's life, her emotional energy, it all becomes heavily dominated by this one relationship with her mother. And over time, the daughter might even stop actively seeking out or nurturing other relationships altogether.
Is there a reason suggested for why she might give up on other connections?
Loyalty is seen as a really strong factor. Daughters can give up other relationships out of this deep-seated, sometimes unconscious sense of loyalty to the mother. And what's particularly complex and maybe counterintuitive is that even if the relationship involves psychological manipulation, emotional blackmail, or sometimes even physical abuse, there can be this perverse sense of certainty the daughter finds in it.
Certainty. That seems odd. Finding certainty in an abusive or controlling dynamic.
It does sound odd. But in this specific unhealthy structure, the mother, in her own way, will likely never betray or abandon the daughter, because frankly, she often has no one else. Nothing else. She clings fiercely to this connection.
Ah, okay. So the daughter potentially gives up the chance for fulfillment and also the inherent risk and uncertainty of navigating healthy relationships with others for the difficult, maybe painful, but utterly predictable certainty of the relationship she has with her mother.
That seems to be the dynamic described. It's like there's this unspoken, almost unconscious pact between them, as if the relationship itself whispers, "You are the most important. It's just us two. I won't let anyone else in. I won't betray you. I vow faithfulness and loyalty to this bond."
And the daughter, consciously or not, kind of aligns with this, sacrificing other potential connections for the sake of this one primary, albeit damaging, bond.
That's the picture painted, sacrificing everything else for this one relationship.
That's incredibly heavy. Given all of this, the intensity, the history, the roles breaking free must be just immensely difficult.
It is. Leaving such a deeply entangled relationship is often described as a very long, very challenging process. And it's important to remember, too, that while the mother is often the primary driver of the possessive dynamic, there can also be elements on the daughter's side that contribute to keeping her tethered. It's rarely a completely one-sided situation.
Right. So even if the daughter gets to a point where she wants to break free, she has to understand the mother isn't going to just let her go, make it easy.
Absolutely not. The daughter needs to be prepared for the fact that the mother will almost certainly not let her go willingly or easily. The resistance will likely be intense.
And why is that resistance usually so fierce?
Because, for the mother, letting go often means confronting a profound, terrifying loneliness. It means being left alone with all the difficult realities, all the uncomfortable feelings she's been using the relationship with her daughter to avoid and escape from.
Like her own unresolved childhood stuff, that pain and anger you mentioned.
Oh. Yes. She'll have to face those unmet needs, potentially her own rage, and she won't have that constantly available person to unload onto anymore. She might be left solely with a husband she intensely dislikes, perhaps, without the distraction or the emotional outlet the daughter provides.
So the daughter has become her main source of comfort, energy, contact, connection. Her lifeline, really.
That's often how it's described. Her main source of connection and validation, whether that's in person, on the phone, whatever, is her emotional lifeline.
And she will fight tooth and nail to keep that lifeline.
Likely, yes. She will probably fight very, very hard. The observations suggest she might employ all available techniques, including those below the belt.
Techniques below the belt? What does that actually look like?
Well, it can manifest as intense emotional struggling, lashing out verbally, really dramatic displays of suffering, and very often playing the victim card, portraying herself as utterly betrayed, abandoned, deeply wounded by the daughter's attempts at independence.
So extreme guilt tripping would be a major tool in her arsenal.
Guilt tripping on every conceivable level, yes. And in more extreme situations, it could even involve threats or potentially physical aggression when they meet. The sense is that everything is possible because, from the mother's perspective in this fight, all holds are permitted. She feels she's fighting for her survival.
Because she genuinely feels she's fighting for something absolutely crucial to her emotional well-being, her very existence almost.
That's the feeling conveyed. And a key point often stressed is that she typically takes no responsibility for her actions or the devastating impact they have on her daughter. As long as she demands this level of emotional energy, availability, and control, the daughter is severely limited. She just cannot have truly fulfilling relationships with others.
Or if she does try, those relationships become incredibly strained, they suffer enormously.
Precisely. The daughter is constantly torn, pulled between her mother's relentless demands and the needs of anyone else in her life. Or she simply becomes completely exhausted, drained by the constant conflict and tension.
And the mother doesn't give up easily because she derives such huge benefit from keeping things exactly as they are.
Exactly. It provides her with that surrogate fulfillment we talked about earlier. She has placed her entire sense of borrowed fulfillment, the connection she didn't get from her own mother, maybe her husband. Often she lacks close friends, too. She's placed all of that onto keeping the daughter tied to her. She demands that the daughter provide the fulfillment she effectively gave up trying to get from others in healthier ways.
And she gave up trying to get it from others because healthy relationships require things she's unwilling or unable to do.
That's the conclusion often suggested. Healthy relationships need respect for boundaries, give and take, healthy exchange, taking responsibility for your own stuff. These are things it seems she doesn't want to do, or perhaps feels incapable of doing. She wants the freedom, maybe, to constantly make someone feel guilty, to potentially lash out psychologically or even physically, to call it all hours.
Things that strangers or even friends just wouldn't tolerate.
Exactly. Things most other people simply wouldn't put up with. So, by effectively abandoning the effort required for healthy adult relationships, she entrenches herself deeper and deeper into this single, consuming, unhealthy dynamic with her daughter.
That's the perspective presented, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Placing all her emotional eggs in this one basket, demanding this one daughter meet all those needs.
It's such a difficult, painful situation. And it sounds like the path to breaking free is just incredibly daunting. It's understandable why some daughters might feel, well, paralyzed, unable to even begin.
It really is. And this touches on a heartbreaking reality for some daughters.
Yeah.
You might just wait, feeling unable to break free, maybe hoping that time will eventually resolve it,
Yeah.
that they'll finally find freedom after the mother passes away.
Hoping that the end of the physical presence automatically brings liberation. That's the hope. But the insights offered here present a challenging perspective on that. They suggest that the energetic connection in these deeply enmeshed relationships can be so powerful that the mother might continue to draw from the daughter, energetically speaking, even after she has died.
Even after death. How is that described as showing up?
Well, the idea is that because the mother perhaps feared loneliness so intensely, resisted letting go in life, she might continue to hold on to the daughter energetically. The daughter might still experience feelings of being somehow enslaved or burdened, maybe suffer a loss of strength, face physical illness, or remain unable to form a healthy, fulfilling romantic relationship long after the mother is physically gone.
Wow. So just waiting, just hoping that death will automatically sever the tie and resolve the dynamic
Yeah.
that might not actually bring the freedom the daughter longs for.
The implication is that simply waiting, avoiding the necessary internal work, avoiding confronting the dynamic while the mother is alive, it may not achieve the desired liberation. Time passes, years, decades maybe. But the core entanglement, that deep psychological and energetic bond, might unfortunately persist.
That really underscores just how deep and persistent this kind of dynamic can be, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. It makes it clear this isn't just, difficult personalities clashing or typical generational tension. It's a profound, engulfing dynamic, often fueled by the mother's deep unmet needs and her intense fear of abandonment, and it gets reinforced by the daughter's loyalty and that strange, twisted sense of certainty she might find within it.
Yeah, it really highlights the mother's significant deficits, the way the daughter gets pulled into that surrogate partner or even mother role,
Mm-hmm.
and the intense, sometimes ruthless resistance the mother puts up against any move the daughter makes towards independence.
And based on these insights, really understanding what's going on here, what's actually working in this dynamic, seems critically important. Awareness looks like a vital first step, even though, let's be honest, the path towards genuine freedom from such a deep bond looks incredibly long and likely very challenging.
That awareness, though, just recognize the reality, even when it's painful and goes against everything society tells us about mothers, that seems key. And perhaps thinking about how deep this entanglement is and the potential for it to continue impacting the daughter even after the mother's physical absence. It prompts a really difficult question for anyone who might recognize themselves in this pattern, doesn't it? What is the true long-term cost of waiting for external change, just hoping time or circumstance resolves it, versus starting that incredibly difficult but necessary internal work required to truly break free?
That's the question that really lingers, isn't it? The long-term cost of staying in that waiting pattern when the whole structure of the relationship is built on this foundation of unmet needs, control, and profound entanglement.